Goldilocks and the Three Bears, retold from the original by Robert Southey. Once upon a time there was a little girl called Goldilocks. She lived in a little house that her father had built out of wooden logs. It looked exactly as a house in the middle of a forest should look, with its brightly painted doors and window shutters. Goldilocks was a helpful little girl, and she often went into the forest to collect food for her mother and baby brother. "Take care and don't talk to strangers," her mother would always say as she waved goodbye. One day Goldilocks was out walking in the forest when she came upon a twisted little house that stood at the end of a path. She'd never seen a house quite like it before. "I wonder who lives in that strange little house," she said. "If I knock on the door, perhaps I'll be invited in." 3 times she knocked, but there was no reply. So Goldilocks gently pushed the front door and, to her surprise, found it was open. Once she was inside the house, she called out, "Hello, is there anybody there?" 3 times she shouted out, but nobody answered her. By now Goldilocks was feeling very hungry, so she went to the kitchen to look for some food. "Oh, how I'd love something to eat," she said to herself. And when she saw the kitchen table, it was as if her dream had come true, because the table was set for 3 people, and at each place setting there was a bowl of porridge. On the table sat a large bowl, a middle-sized bowl, and a small bowl of porridge, and not one of the bowls of porridge had been touched. "If someone doesn't come and eat that porridge soon, I'm going to eat it myself," said Goldilocks. "All this walking in the forest has made me feel very hungry indeed." The house was very quiet. In fact, the only sound that Goldilocks could hear was the ticking of the clock. By now Goldilocks was so hungry, and the bowls of porridge looked so inviting, that she sat down and tucked into the biggest bowl. But no sooner had she taken a mouthful than she cried out, "Ouch! This porridge is so hot that I've burned my tongue." Next she took a spoonful of porridge from the middle-sized bowl. "Brrr! This porridge is far too cold," she said. So she tried the porridge in the smallest bowl. "Mmm, this tastes just right," she said, and it tasted so delicious that she ate it all up. When Goldilocks had finished eating, she couldn't resist exploring the house. She went into the living room where she found 3 rocking chairs, and she knew what fun rocking chairs were. She had often sat in one at her grandmother's house. First she tried the biggest chair, but when she sat down it seemed far too big and she felt lost in it. So she jumped onto the middle-sized chair. This chair was far too soft, so she leapt onto the smallest rocking chair. This felt just right, so she rocked away in it for a few minutes. But she was just a little too heavy for this chair, and with a loud crack it broke into pieces under her weight. After her fall, she wasn't hurt, so she got up and decided to take a look upstairs. In the bedroom, 3 wooden beds stood side by side. There was a big bed, a middle-sized bed, and a small bed. After her escapades, Goldilocks was feeling rather tired, and the beds looked very inviting. I'm so full and so tired, I need a little nap," said Goldilocks, and then she gave out a great big yawn. First she tried the biggest bed, but this was far too big and uncomfortable for her. In fact, it was so big that it made her look like a little rag doll when she lay in the middle of it, and it was so high up that her feet didn't touch the floor when she sat on the edge of it. Next, Goldilocks sat on the middle-sized bed, but this was covered in soft, feathery cushions and was much too bouncy for her. So then she climbed into the smallest bed of the 3. This one felt just perfect. It was neither too hard nor too soft, so she pulled the bed covers around her, and in no time at all she was fast asleep. Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying the audio ebook. I won't keep you for long. Last year I was demonetized by YouTube, and so I lost all opportunity to earn. But I love sharing the audio ebooks with you so much, I carried on. If you value what I'm doing here, please consider heading over to my other channel, Book Club, and hitting that subscribe button as a sign of support. The link's in the description. Now, back to the book. Enjoy. While Goldilocks was sleeping, the owners of the house came back from their walk in the forest. But they were no ordinary owners. They were in fact 3 brown bears, and they were very surprised to see that their front door was already open. The bears had been walking in the forest for a long time, and they had all worked up such a big appetite that they went straight to the kitchen to eat their porridge. But when they looked on the kitchen table, they couldn't believe the mess they saw. Porridge had been spilled all over the place. "Who's been eating my porridge?" said Daddy Bear in his big gruff voice as he picked up the biggest bowl. "And who's been eating my porridge?" said Mummy Bear in her gentle little voice as she picked up the middle-sized bowl. "Who's been eating my porridge and has eaten it all up?" said Baby Bear in his squeaky little voice, when he looked inside the smallest bowl and noticed there wasn't one single drop of porridge left in it. Then the family of bears went into the living room. "Somebody's been sitting in my chair," said Daddy Bear in his deep, gruff voice. Mummy Bear noticed the cushion on her chair had been moved. "Somebody's been sitting in my chair," she cried in her gentle little voice. And when Baby Bear saw his little chair in pieces, he sobbed in his squeaky little voice, "Somebody's been sitting in my chair, and now it's broken in pieces." The three bears then crept upstairs in the hope that they might find the intruder, but as soon as they got to the bedroom, Daddy Bear noticed that his bed looked very untidy, so he searched under the covers. "Who's been sleeping in my bed?" he growled. Mummy Bear noticed that the covers on her bed were not as neat and tidy as they always were, and she said, "Who's been sleeping in my bed?" When the baby bear got to his bed, he said, "Mummy and Daddy, who's been sleeping in my bed and is still there?" And he said it in such a loud voice that Goldilocks woke up. Goldilocks sat up in bed and she couldn't believe that there were three brown bears peering at her. "What's your name, little girl?" said Daddy Bear. "Where do you live, little girl?" said Mummy Bear. "Why did you eat all my porridge?" said Baby Bear. But Goldilocks was too frightened to reply. "Tell us about yourself. We won't hurt you," said Daddy Bear. But the sight of the three bears was too much for Goldilocks. She leapt out of bed and ran down the stairs and out of the house. "Come back! You've forgotten one of your boots!" shouted Mummy Bear, but Goldilocks didn't take any notice of her. "Come back and see us again!" shouted the three bears as Goldilocks ran out of the gate and into the forest. But Goldilocks daren't look back, and she was so frightened that she promised herself that she'd never go in any strange houses again. The end. If you value what I'm doing here, please consider heading over to my other channel, Book Club, and hitting that subscribe button as a sign of support. The link's in the description.